All right, so here is where we're at. We have our process for finding the extrema. The first step is always to find the critical numbers. Now, what we did in the last section is we developed the first derivative test. And the first derivative test was, again, the draw the number line. You would draw your number line and you would test a number to the left and to the right to determine where you have a relative max or min. Now, that first derivative test always works. There is another test that is known as the second derivative test. And the second derivative test, the reason why you would be concerned about it or want to use it is there's no number line. And oftentimes we get kind of tired of drawing number lines. So the cool thing about the second derivative test is there's no number line involved here. So there is significantly less computation with the second derivative. And the second derivative test, that is. And the idea with the second derivative test is that you plug the critical numbers into the second derivative. So if I take my critical number and I get that the second derivative is greater than 0, that means that the function is concave up. And if you think about a concave up function, assuming that this first derivative is equal to 0, concave up is going to be a relative min at that point. So what the second derivative test says is that if the second derivative is positive, that means it's concave up, and you will have a relative min at that point. Meanwhile, if when you plug in the second or plug the critical number into the second derivative, you get that it's negative, then it's concave down. And if it's concave down, assuming you have a horizontal tangent, that will give you a relative max at that point. Now, the one little hiccup that happens with the second derivative is if the second derivative is equal to 0, then there is no conclusion that you can make. And because you can't say it's concave up, you can't say it's concave down, and so therefore you would have to go back if it was equal to 0 and use the first derivative test. So the benefit of the second derivative test is there's no number line, it's a lot less computation. The drawback of it is that it doesn't always work, but almost 9 out of 10 times it is going to work. So it's a very valuable thing for us to know about because it does allow us to not have that computation component.